Thank you for joining me here at the Real ResQ Podcast, where we have teamed up with Vertical Magazine to be part of the Vertical Podcast Network. It's known as Helicast. And you can go to verticalhelicast.com to check out not only this podcast, but the Hangar Z, the Helicopter Podcast, Vertical MRO Podcasts, and we've got more coming. So keep an eye out. Now it's time to give a shout out to the sponsors for this episode. Axness. Their mission, wireless intercom. Check them out at axness.com. Ready Swimmer. Training the body, sharpening the mind, and building leaders. Our mission is to make you ready. Check them out at readyswimmer.com. And the Real ResQ Store, where you can go get all of your Real ResQ swag. Check it out at therealrescuestore.com. Now, coming up next in this episode, we are joined by a guy who is a dual citizen between Switzerland and the United States. He has served in multiple militaries and in multiple branches. He's currently working with Air Zermatt in Switzerland and the U.S. Air Force as a Pararescue reserveman in California. Please welcome our next guest and his stories, Mr. Oliver Kreuzer. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. Today I've got a very unique guest. As a matter of fact, he's one of the first guys I've ever had in this position and where he's working in the world. So I'm pretty excited about it. You've been in the U.S. Army Reserve and now U.S. Air Force Reserve as a pararescue. Plus, you're working with Air Zermatt, which is amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Oliver Kreuzer. What's up, dude?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad you could join me here to share some stories. I actually should throw one more thing. You're like a high-speed like paramedic too. Like not just any paramedic, like next level paramedic.
Well, I'm trying to be. I just I just can't be bored, so I like to chase every certification
you sound like the rest
out
of
there
us.
and just trying to get as much experience as I can, as long as I'm able to do it.
Is that so on the back end of all your emails you can have this big long like comma?
No,
Yes,
actually not at all. Never. On the email, you just find my name, Oliver. I usually don't even put my
That's it.
name on it.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Nice. Well, like I said, man, Oliver, thank you so much for joining me. I am looking forward to our conversation because, like I said, you're my first guy I've ever had from one, Switzerland, and two, that works with Air Zermatt. I've reached out to a couple guys over there to say, hey, would you be willing to come on? And they're like, nah. So
the Swiss are usually
yes, I'm
very
so
reserved.
excited.
I get it. The Swiss are usually pretty
yeah.
reserved and hold it for themselves.
I'm okay with that too. I really am. And I'll tell you what, before I get into the whole PJ thing, Pararescue, let's get a little background about you. So from Switzerland, where in that world did you end up becoming a U.S. citizen and grew up, and how did you get into search and rescue? The whole background. I want to know everything.
All right. Yeah, so I grew up in the mountains, and that's all I knew back then. Never really played any team sports or anything like that, just being up in the mountains, skiing, mountaineering. And then age 16 or 17, I went to the States, to Texas, Houston, Texas, which was pretty flat.
Nice.
But still good times. Did my high school there, got to experience American football and prom. And after graduating, I didn't know what to do in my life. So I went back to Switzerland and I joined the Swiss Army. Because as a Swiss citizen, you have to, whenever you hit 18, you have to serve. So I did that. So I went to selection there for the Swiss version of Special Forces and did that, but it's only part-time. like every Swiss male has to serve. And after that, I still didn't know what to do in my life. Couldn't do this full time, so I went back to the States and did 9/11 happened right after, a month after I got back to the States. So I signed up to be an EMT basic and really liked that. Then I just continued all the way to paramedic. And once I was a paramedic, I was like, I want to be in a helicopter. I don't want to be in an ambulance forever. But they all laughed at me because I had zero experience. I was like 21 years old, just got my paramedic. So they all told me to, just get some experience and all the certifications. And I was like, what certification? They're like, well, try to be an ACLS instructor, PHLS instructor, get your FPC. That was pretty new back then, the Certified Flight Paramedic. So I did that.
Yeah.
I just signed up for all the courses, and every time I knocked them out, I sent them an email. Believe it or not, but back in 2004, they already had emails. But so I kept sending them all those certs. It's like, what's next? What's next? And I knew that there was a helicopter service down in Corpus Christi, 4 hours away. And they were the only ones who actually talked to me and responded to me because I was so young and inexperienced. And once a month, they had a training, in-house training. So every month I drove down there for 4 hours, took off 4 o'clock in the morning to make it at the 8 o'clock training until noon, and then drove back to Houston. So I think that kind of impressed them. And every difficult call I had in Houston, I emailed back and forth with the chief flight nurse. And after a year or so, he's like, man, I know you don't have the experience. We usually look, for paramedics who have 3 to 4 years experience. But I really like your drive and knocking out all the certs in record speed and making our in-house training. So they saw some commitment. So they offered me a part-time job first, but was only allowed to fly with the chief flight nurse. And that's how I got into this whole thing. But after a year, I really, really liked it. It was the best opportunity for me to start with helicopter EMS. But I wanted to end up on a rescue helicopter for hoist just because I grew up in the mountains. At that time, I flew back to Switzerland twice a year. And every time I flew back to Switzerland just to catch up with my family, I always ended up doing a helicopter rescue course with Air Zermatt. And they weren't hiring at that time, but I just wanted to show my face every time I went back and did one of their courses. And 2007, they emailed me and said, hey, we have a spot open. Would you like to try out? I was like, wow, cool. Yeah. So I flew back to Switzerland just for a one-day interview, basically, and got hired. And
from Houston to Switzerland for a one-day interview.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
I think that's, I was always very committed. Like, if you want to have the world, you have to give everything you have, which I did. And then I got hired. And back then I broke up with my girlfriend and all that for various reasons. And I flew back to Switzerland with one luggage, and I had about $400 in my bank account. I mean, my mom helped me out back then, but I was like zero money, I had nothing. And I went back to Switzerland, and when I landed there, I was like, man, I need new mountaineering boots because the other ones are so old whenever I start that job. So out of the 400, I used like $50 for a train ticket to Zermatt, and I went to the store and bought boots for like $250. So the first month was kind of rough, and I didn't want to accept any money from my mom. So then I was at Air Zermatt, and every year I went to a conference in the United States called the Air Medical Transport Conference. And there was a talk from some colonel. I can't remember who he was, but he was like from the U.S. Army, medevac, and he was basically saying that there's a huge shortage of flight paramedics in the U.S. Army and for the medevac program. So he kind of talked about, if you're a civilian, if you have your national registered paramedic and you flight paramedic, have your FPC and you flying, there's a pathway to go straight to a medevac unit in the Army Reserve. So after that speech, I walked up to him and said, "Sir, how can I start this process?" And he was very surprised because he's like, "Oh, someone's actually interested." He didn't expect that. So he said, "Yeah, let me get your email and all that." So a couple of weeks later, he emailed me and said, "Yeah, there's this there's a medevac unit out in Colorado. We put you in contact." And another couple of weeks later, the Colorado unit called me and said, "Yeah, you're still interested?" I was like, "Yes, sir." So they're like, yeah, that's awesome. So unfortunately, you have to go through boot camp and all that. So I was already, I can't remember. I was probably 30 years old, or 31 or 29, whatever. But I was already older. And I was like, yeah, no problems. I Googled it. It said like 9 weeks boot camp. It's like, cool. So I had to go to Maps and told my employer, Air Zermatt, like, "Hey, can I have a break?" And I had a pretty good deal with the Colorado Army Medevac unit where I would only have to fly to Colorado every 2 or 3 months for like a week straight. And that was it. So Air Zermatt was
Nice.
cool with it. Yeah, it was a pretty good
Normally
deal.
it's every week, one weekend a month.
Exactly.
But you guys, so you coming overseas, they hook
Yes.
you up, come every quarter,
Yes.
and work a week. Oh, that's
Exactly.
great.
I mean, they were very
That's
happy
super
to have a flight paramedic who was already kind of qualified. And I was able to make that deal with them to come like a week or 10 days straight every 2-3 months. But I had to go to MEPS first. And after that, they sent me to boot camp to Fort Jackson. And that was an experience. Being a flight paramedic for a couple of years and getting yelled at for 9 weeks at boot camp. And after that, it sounded like that because I'm already a flight paramedic and FPC and all that, I just have to go to Fort Sam to get checked off, like check the skills at Fort Sam for the 68 Whiskey Combat Medic course. But when I showed up there, nobody knew anything about it. They're like, "No, you're just a regular E4 soldier and you need to go through the whole 68 Whiskey program." I was like, "What?" Nobody told me that. But I was able to skip the first 8 weeks, the EMT basic program, because I already had my paramedic. So I ended up doing the 8 weeks of combat medicine. And after that, just straight to the unit. And they got me trained in-house, which was pretty cool. And then I was with them for a while. Yeah. And then every 2-3 months, I flew back and forth to Colorado, did my thing. But I still wanted more. So anyways, I mean, I was pretty happy, but I knew there were all those special forces out there and all that. And I was at Fort Carson, and I was always like, man, if I would be 20 again, I should have done that. But with Air Zermatt, we started training the U.S. Air Force pilots and the hoist operators called SMA, Special Mission Aviators. And they brought in the PJs in 2018. And because I like to skydive, I skydive since age 16. We had a lot in common.
Since 16, wow, good for you. Yeah.
That's another story. But
yeah.
So they kept showing up. And we just showed them the high altitude helicopter rescue stuff. They're like, "Man, you should be a PJ," because they found out that I was in the Army Reserve and had a cat cart and all that. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know, I'm getting old." And by that time, it was like 36 or 37. They're like, "Yeah, you're getting old, but you still have it." I was like, "Okay. What about the pool stuff, the water stuff?" They're like, "Yeah, we will train you up." And they kind of sold it to me that it's not too bad, the water stuff. Like it's doable. Well, I was dying, so but it wasn't very good. And then COVID hit, and I had a very hard time to train because all the pools were closed, and the lake is super cold, like 9 months out of a year. So I flew to Dubai during COVID a couple times. Got a real good swim coach from the Philippines, and man, he was roasting me, but it was good. It was really good, and the whole water confidence, which is a big thing, I wasn't good at it at all. Like zero. Again, like we do, during pre-dive, one of the instructors, while we were doing flutter kicks, he's like, "You haven't done a whole lot of water rescues, have you, Kreuzer?" And I was like, "No, sir, because actually I did, but all our water is frozen. It's called glaciers, crevasse rescues." So we left at that. But I went down to Egypt for 2 or 3 weeks, and I had an American freediver for like 3 weeks, and we did meditation and stretching and breathing techniques and all that. That really helped me. Honestly, I don't think I would have made selection without that that freedive training I had down in Egypt. Yeah, since then I made it. I went through selection at age 39. I was pushing it, and yeah,
That is incredible, by the way.
Standing, and I do about 4 months out of a year. I do for the California National Guard as a PJ, and the other 8 months for Air Zermatt. So I think that is the long version of my story.
Wow, Oliver, that's amazing. First of all, like, congratulations on all your achievements. Pure motivation, and I absolutely love it. That's incredible. Like, you were not going to take no as an answer, and you were going to keep going. Yeah.
No,
I mean, motivational speaker.
No, I wouldn't say that, but if I have something in my mind, I have to do it. Like, it doesn't matter. It's what it takes. Yeah.
It's incredible. Like, everything you just talked about, from driving 4 hours for 4-hour training from Houston down to Corpus Christi. Like that. Like, most people don't do that. They look at that like, no, that's too much. I'm not going to do that.
I see that.
Most people would not go to Pararescue at 39 years old. I'm going to throw that out there as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
No, I understand that. That kind of sometimes frustrates me with people who want to have the world but not committing. And I kind of see that there somewhat with trying to find new people. Like, everybody wants a job, but nobody wants the investment to get the job. It's all about work-life balance. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I wish I had work-life balance in my life. But at the same time, I feel like everybody can achieve everything if you put in the work. And I'm not an Instagrammer at all, but a couple of weeks ago, I saw this Instagram. Once in a while, I'm on Instagram, and there was a real cool quote. Like, everybody is jealous of you, of your achievements, but no one is jealous of the way how you. I mean, of I can't even remember, but like, basically, what it takes to get those achievements. I strongly believe everybody, is capable of doing anything in life, as long as you put in the work. And
right.
I always did.
Don't quit.
For me, it was never a plan B. There was always just like a plan A, and just go for it. Invest everything, and usually it turns out pretty well. And I was lucky so far.
I wouldn't call it lucky. I would call it pure drive and motivation, and just fighting the good fight to move on. You wanted it. You went and got it.
Yeah. Yes.
You endured what most people don't. And I usually I don't do that. I don't do that too much, where like I like to throw me in there more than anybody else, because then I can relate to just me. I'm not putting somebody else on there. But when you see a guy like you that has that motivation, that pushes on to do this stuff, exactly. Like, that's like, they're not going to give it to you. They didn't give me rescue swimmer school. They didn't hand me a set of fins and say, okay, congratulations, you made it through school. No. I worked for that. I got pulled out of the pool at least once on the side, throwing up all over the side of the pool deck. Why? Because they were kicking our ass. And it was like pure motivation.
Yes.
I didn't quit. You didn't quit. Oh, Oliver, we could go down this path all day. I love talking about this stuff. I love the motivation. I love the drive. I love to get up and go. Oh, I get all motivated. I'm ready. Oliver, I'm ready to go climb the mountain now. I'm coming up. I'll see you shortly. Let's go. It's good. All right, but this is not about you and I climbing mountains right now. This is about you. So I'm gonna come back after all your qualifications and stuff. So you actually, I don't even know where to actually ask about your first rescue. So we could go one of a couple different ways. We could go with like your first as an EMT. You're like, what was your first EMT call, or what was your first like rescue that stood out?
I
to
even
you?
remember that.
You can go through all of them. All right, go ahead, give us all of them. We're gonna divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Axnis. The Axnis PNG wireless ICS system delivers cutting-edge wireless ICS technology to any aircraft. As a fully integrated system or as a carry-on, carry-off mobile base station, the PNG wireless system is the right solution for any mission.
I wasn't a good EMT either, basically. So I was very intimidated. So in Houston, there was this volunteer EMS service. They don't exist anymore. They used to be called like Clear Lake Emergency Medical Corps. And I was that 18-year-old guy. And I mean, I was very motivated, but I didn't know anything. And the older paramedics, some of them were nice, but there was a real grumpy one. And he was actually working full-time. We had a few full-timers, and I always ended up working with him. And he was so harsh. And he was a dick. And you know, he knew everything, and he was actually good, but that was this 18-year-old, and I hated my life, but I learned so much from him. And one of those rotations I did was down in Beaumont, Texas, from a paramedic rotation. And I remember so many things from there. They were like my first real calls where they basically let me do stuff. And there was this one gentleman, unfortunately I can't remember his name, but he was so good teaching, and I still do a lot of stuff he taught me. That was just from a very few days of writing out, and that always sticks to me. It's like, hey, invest in those new people, because it did make a difference to me, and I'm trying to make a difference for the new ones who start this career path now. But yeah, I mean, there was not really a rescue that stuck out during EMS. My EMS time, but when I started flying down in Corpus Christi, I was amazed how many good calls they get, like quality calls, like real critical injured people, car accidents, and the distance down there are so long, and very often you only have an EMT basic on scene, like a BLS unit, and I was pretty busy, and especially me being very new and had to RSI many patients I haven't really RSI'd before. And that was a real good experience back then. There are just a couple car crashes, but again, for me, like a car crash is a car crash. You know, the injuries differ a little bit, but it's usually always just a regular PHTLS kind of call. And so there's like no rescue that really sticks out particular, but I had many good calls, so that was a really good experience. And with Air Zermatt, I remember my first one because I had the same experience I had as EMT basic with our medical director. He's retired now. I respect him a lot, but he was very old school. I mean, when I started, he was already like 55 or so, hardcore, and done this for like 30 years. And also Air Zermatt, I was very young. I was like, I can't remember, 24, 25. So I was very young, and he's like 55, seen it all, done it all. And he tested me. And before our first rescue, he literally told me, it's like, hey, whenever you get a call, we go out there and you're going to perform and I'm going to watch you. And just the way he told me that, I was like, ugh, I'm scared. And I was scared. And I was so nervous. And yeah, we flew that first call, and whatever I did, I obviously did it wrong, right? So he always corrected me with everything. He just wanted to indoctrinate me his way of doing business up there, which I totally respect. But I was like, man, I feel just like when I was EMT basic. Whatever I do it wrong. And yeah, I'm not trying to be that guy whenever I fly with a new guy. But at the same time, it was still kind of good. he indoctrinated me right. But the first half a year was very harsh. And also with the pilots, same thing. We had a few old school pilots, and their way of crew resource management is a little different. So
Are they the guys that are in
No,
front?
no,
Be
no,
like,
no,
hey,
no.
quiet down back there. Quiet down. Hey.
Oh, absolutely,
I'll talk to you
100%.
when I'm ready. I
No,
might have flown with
absolutely.
one or two of those guys. I know.
So it's a little different. So I think that's what I remember more than the actual patients. Because when you ask me the questions over email, can you come up with good stories and stuff? I mean, I do, but usually patients are patients. Patients just have different pattern of injuries or illnesses, and you just deal with it. You just work with it. But to me, that's always like kind of the same. You just do your A, B, C, D, ease the pain, and transport to the hospital. What sticks to me more is the technical aspects of those helicopter rescues, because the weather conditions, the very high altitude, extractions, the logistics on crevasse rescues, avalanche rescues, they usually stick to me a little bit more than the patients, because even avalanche rescues where you have 3-4 buried, I mean, those are 3-4 human
Did you
beings
say
being
34 buried?
No, I'm sorry, 3 and 4. Like, if 3 or 4 patients are
You may
buried.
have said 3 or 4, but I heard 34, and I was like,
Okay.
oh my gosh.
3 or
What?
4, I'm sorry. That's my accent.
Okay.
and
Yeah. Still
and
3 or
yeah,
4. You have 3 or
let's
4
say
people
once
buried. My goodness.
and then like two are deceased, one or CPR in progress, another one is injured, and one is not injured at all. To me, they're always like, it's kind of the same pattern. But the avalanches, the locations, the altitude, the weather, that's what usually sticks to me. If that makes any sense.
It totally does. Okay. So what's something that, like, what's an event that you got launched out to that sticks out to you?
They were all in the beginning days, because it was just, everything was new to me. And I was already working for almost a year for Air Zermatt. But then we had a call at night. It was like 11 p.m. And it was a little stormy. It was very high winds, very high winds at top of the mountain, which was 4,100 meters. And that's about 14,000 feet in freedom units. And once we got up there,
In freedom units. That's great. Thank you, Oliver.
once we were up there, I was the hoist operator. And back then, we still used those old llamas, those old helicopters. They were great. They were great for very high altitude. But it's a very unique helicopter to do a rescue. It's very small. And I was the hoist operator next to the pilot. And I lowered the rescuer. And, we always do dynamic hoisting. We always, like insertion, extraction, we always keep the ship moving to keep the downwash away from the load. But the wind was so strong. It was about 60 miles an hour, almost 100 kilometers an hour. And
Wow.
we were stationary next to that wall, almost vertical wall, a couple of feet away from the wall. But as I lowered the rescuer, the whole load, the rescue was about 45 degrees behind the helicopter, because the wind was so strong. And I had a hard time to communicate with the pilot, because I was just overwhelmed. We were so close to the wall. It was nighttime. It was very, very windy. The helicopter was shaking, and the rescuer was 45 degrees behind the helicopter. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to work. How can we put him on there? And I was completely overwhelmed. I haven't done much night hoist. I was still at early stage of deployment. And then I finally told the pilot, and because he kept asking, hey, what's going on? Is he on the wall? Is he on the wall? And I was like, no, not yet, not yet. But in my mind, it's like, he never gets to the wall, because he's just getting pushed back by the wind, by the very strong wind. So I finally told him, it's like, I don't know how to explain, but he's way behind the helicopter. I think it's the wind. And I was just, like, I just was overwhelmed by the situation. He's like, why did you tell me? So he basically went out there again and came in sideways and was almost slamming the load into the wall. where the rescue specialist had those 2 ice axes in his hands, and he just secured him as soon as he hit the wall, attached himself to the wall, and he unhooked so quick. And in my mind, it's like in my mind, it was like, I don't know what happened, but in my mind, he was about to fall down, but he didn't. But anyways, and then I was just basically kind of shocked. I can't even remember the patient, to be honest. It was some evacuation, but it was so windy we couldn't get back to them. They had to climb down a little bit and do a better spot, and then we were able to get him in. But anyways, it's calls like that stick out to me with the patients, even if they're critical and all that. I don't know. I just do the work, hand them over to the hospital, and I'm not blocking them, but I always have a hard time to remember what they actually had. Maybe it's some self-protection I have, but
you know what? That's okay. I don't think I need to hear about the patients right now. I want to know about the getting on scene right now. Holy cow! 2 ice axes coming down. The guy, you're a hoist operator in the aircraft. That dude has ice axe, slams it into the ice and connects, and it disconnects from the helicopter.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, it sounded a little bit over traumatic. I mean, it wasn't like a 90-degree kind of wall. It was probably, I don't know, 40, 50 degrees right there. And apparently the snow was on that mountain was kind of good enough that whenever he was in there with his crampons on and the ice axe, he had a pretty good stand apparently. But from the helicopter, it didn't look like. And I was just way overwhelmed up there. Yeah. So I got more comfortable over the years, but initially that was a big ugh. So the next morning, I told one of the older guys I trusted, because I was too embarrassed, to show any fears to any other team members. But I told this one guy, I said, man, I don't know if I did the right thing, and I've never done this before and stuff like that. So he sensed that I was a little scared, and he told the pilot later on that day, he's like, hey, can you talk to Oliver? I think he was a little scared of the whole helicopter rescue. He's like, yeah, no problem. So he talked to me and he said, hey, get in the helicopter. So I was like, okay. And I didn't know if I was in trouble, because I knew that he snitched on me and told him that I was scared. Well, he was super kind. He was the CEO later, and he became the CEO later. He just retired a year ago, unfortunately. So he flew me back up to that mountain just to show me. He showed me exactly the same spot we were the night before, and he was just holding a hover. It wasn't as windy anymore, but still he was holding the hover in front of that wall, the vertical wall. And then he basically showed me, look, I was always safe, because if anything would have happened, I have this escape route. And he showed me the escape, like how to escape with a helicopter if things turn worse. And he just drops down away from the mountain. And he did this 2-3 times just to show me. And I was like, okay, I didn't know. For me, it was just too close to the wall and too windy and all that. And he said, yeah, absolutely no problem. That was for him, it was an easy rescue, or not bad. I was like, okay, now I get it. So I really appreciate that he took that time and invested those flight minutes to show me again.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good instructor right there, and a good team player that wants to give back and give that little bit of knowledge, be like, hey, check this out.
Yes.
Yeah. No, wow, Oliver, holy cow. If that's just one of the ones that stand out to you, I cannot wait to hear more. Let it ride, man. God. Yeah, let me ask you a couple questions. So sure. You're a hoist operator, right?
As well, yes.
Are you also the guy that goes down on the hoist? Okay, so you're a rescue specialist as well?
No, so I've done the rescue specialist course after being with Air Zermatt for about 12 years at that time. It takes a long time. So it's a little complicated crew constellation there. We have rescue specialists. They don't work for Air Zermatt. They're full-time mountain guides. Oh. And we have them, I would say, my stats are probably wrong. I would say 10-15% of the times we take them with. So they're on alert for a week at a time. And whenever there's a technical difficult situation, we take them with us because they're mountain guides and all they do is climb Matterhorn all day, every day. Not all day, you do it once a day, but during the seasons and go for ski touring and all that winter time. So they're on the mountain all the time. So they're real good at it. And they're pretty much the elite of all the mountain guides in Zermatt. It's you have to be born in Zermatt to be one of them. And you just have to be really, really good. And that's the ones we send down the hook on the very difficult ones. And also during crevasse rescues and the avalanche, we have them with us. And each valley has their own rescue specialists because we also want to have rescue specialists that know every little hiking trail and know the mountains in and out around their town. Because if you receive a call that someone falls down, they know exactly where they fell down, which couloir they fell down. If someone is lost on a trail, they talk to them over the phones like, hey, have you seen this little hut? Have you seen this church? Have you seen, this and that? And then they usually know exactly where they're at right away because they know their territory very well. So yeah, we only have like 5 or 6 rescue specialists in Zermatt, and they're really good. They're really, really good.
That's awesome.
The thing. They're just so invested. I mean, they grew up there. They've been mountain guiding all their life, and they're just on the mountain all the time. And there's a huge difference between myself and them. That's if they're at 90%, I'm like at 22%. I'm not able to match because they're on that mountain all like that's how they earn money.
Yeah.
They have to have clients.
Yeah.
Climb up Matterhorn so often. So whenever we go on the Matterhorn rescue and we North Face or whatever, they're like, yeah, I know exactly. I climbed that a month ago. Yes.
Wow. All right. So some of the ones that you do, like specifically with your hoist operation side or your long line, because you guys do a lot of short haul and stuff out of there as well, don't you?
Yeah. That's good.
So how does that work? So I get a patient as a patient, and you and I talked a little bit offline about it's somebody's out skiing, they take a bad tumble, and they're calling you guys, and you just go in and like routinely pick somebody out of the area. And actually throw some numbers out to us. How many rescues do you guys get called out on a year on average?
Yeah, so we do 2,000 calls per year. And we have 2 helicopters 24/7. And in the very peak season,
2,000 per year?
2,000. And in the very peak season, wintertime, we have a third helicopter, but day only. So I always say we have 2.5 helicopters on average for 2,000 calls. And during the peak season...
That's like more than 5 calls a day.
Exactly. So in the peak season, could be even 8 or 9 calls. But here's the but. Out of the 2,000, I mean, you have to understand half Europe is skiing around Zermatt, I feel like. And there's so many people in the mountain, also in the summertime. And the system is different. So out of the 2,000 helicopter rescues, you would only launch to maybe 100 or 150 per year if you would be in the United States. And the reason is the whole philosophy is different. If you're skiing and you break your whatever, collarbone, arm, tib-fib fracture, busted knee, whatever, no matter how small the injuries are almost, you get a helicopter ride. And that for several reasons. So we do many calls where, let's put it this way, about a third of the patients, or or maybe half in the wintertime, they walk to the helicopter. If you have a dislocated shoulder, if you have a broken arm, wrist, collarbone, our on-scene time is, if they need fentanyl, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, if not 25 seconds, I don't know. But we basically, if you can land next to it, we see them like this dislocated shoulder, but they don't look in a whole lot of pain.
Yeah.
Just walk out the helicopter, grab them, and just walk back in, and that's it. And we fly down to the valley. So
So you're
not
kind of
all of
an
them are
air,
high speed,
you're an
super.
ambulance, a ground ambulance service, only
Exactly,
with a
no,
rotor head.
absolutely, 100%. And the other thing is, all those people, even with like stuff you would send an ambulance, we don't have roads up there. So whoever has whatever illness or whatnot in the mountain hut, we fly. And also, 2 o'clock in the morning, if you experience symptoms of acute mountain sickness, and like let's say you throw up and you don't feel well, but it's just acute mountain sickness, we hoist you out of that mountain hut 20 minutes after the call. So it's just, we do it a lot and we do it routinely. Not all patients. I'm really bad with statistics. I said that before, but I would say 80% of our patients are not anywhere critical. They just have a simple issue.
Got it.
It's more a mean of transportation. But, and here's the but, that what makes it more interesting for us is the technical aspects. So
Yeah.
if you're a skier and you get off slope, let's say you fall down, you try to show off and you just fall over the ski slope and have a broken whatever, tip fib or whatever, and you're 10 meters from the ski slope and it's a little steep, we hoist you. Like, we always hoist you if you cannot land. We don't even brief for that. We just fly. We just go there, and whenever we get the call, all we know is the location. And once inside the helicopter, they just tell us real quick the call sign of the ski patrol guy. And whenever we're nearby, we call him up, and he's like, "Yeah, like light wind from the west, and we have a patient with a leg injury, and it's going to be a hoist." We're like, okay. So we just hoist, and we do the hoist. So the hoisting part, or the long line, the short haul piece, is very technical, very interesting, and sometimes very challenging for a non-challenging, medical challenging case. And people may argue, like, why do you guys take that high risk? Because one time an American guy, he was one of those upper ski bar. I think he had a few beers in, but apparently he watched us during a hoist operation between the cable cars and very close to it, and have a 300 feet hoist and all that. And he couldn't believe his eyes. And he was a flight nurse from Colorado. So he stopped by the helicopter rescue base the next day. He's like, "Man, did you do that?" It was like, "Yes." He's like, "This is insane. Like, why? Like, why didn't you just ski him down on a sledge? Like, this is insane. This is a high risk. And like, this is crazy." And, he was kind of serious. I was like, okay. Then I explained to him, it's like, look, the more we do it, the better we become, the safer it is. And to me, that was like routine call. Like, I didn't even see anything challenging in it, what we just did. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is our pilots. Our pilots only fly rescue for about 20% of the time, 20 or 30%. The rest of it, they do external cargo. So they fly external cargo with a line attached on the helicopter all day, every day. Whenever they build a building, or for the ski resort, something up there, they fly the concrete up there, up and down, 100, 150 rotations per day. So our pilots, the more experienced ones, they have 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 cycles of external cargo loads. So you can tell, because after them flying a couple days a basket of concrete, and then they fly a rescue, what's the difference? You just, if you hang on that long line, you replace the bucket of concrete, and they just get good at it at flying external loads. And that's the most important aspect, is having a good pilot who has a lot of external cargo experience. I don't even remember the question you asked me. I'm sorry.
No. This is great, because I like this. I like the conversation side of this, because I feel a lot of the same way. I don't feel that hoist operations are that dangerous. I really don't. And I've been doing it for 20 plus years now. And it's like you said, it's routine. You just go in and you just do it. It's not complicated. It's not, in my opinion, I don't believe it's unsafe. You're like, the amount of checks that we do, the equipment that we go through. And
Mhm.
I'm with you. I do not think it's unsafe.
Mhm.
I think it's extremely fast and a better way for patient care, because you're getting them out of wherever they're at at a much faster rate. And you don't need 10 guys or a full team to get somebody out of a bad situation. You need 4. And I even 4 is a larger number than probably what you guys are running. So go in, get them out, and you're done in just in time for lunch. And oh, by the way, you had a full breakfast. So yeah. Wow. Yeah. You guys are flying a lot. That's funny. All right. So you had mentioned a couple other ones that stand out to you as far as the not the rescue side of it, but just flying in bad weather or again, a avalanche. So what are some of those that stand out to you that you guys deal with? We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. Attention all rescue professionals and tactical athletes. Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at readyswimmer.com or through therealresq.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, are you ready? And therealresqstore.com, your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to therealresqstore.com and let your gear do the talking.
Yes. So, I mean, the weather one is a big one. So the mountains, you can fly IFR. You cannot. And obviously, the pilots need to see something to go from point A to point B. And that can change really quick in the mountains. The weather system is usually very dynamic. And the weather forecast is not as good around Zermatt because it creates its own microclimate. I don't know much about it, but apparently, even on Matterhorn itself, it can be blue sky on one side of Matterhorn and very stormy on the other side, and things can change real quick. And a lot of time, it's try and error. It's you just go for it and try to go as close to the rescue site you can, and then if you cannot access it from one side of the mountain, you go to the other side. And you just try a couple of things. Probably sounds a little unsafe now, but it's usually not, because we always push as long as we know we can land right here or right there. And the other good aspect is the area of responsibility for us is very small, and we know every mountain, and we know everything's so close. Our radius of where we fly is pretty small, and that makes it a little better. But the weather thing is always the most challenging part, I would say. And also it dictates the patient treatment, because sometimes the pilot is telling us on scenes like, hey, we have to go right away because there's a big clouds coming in and you don't have time to do anything. So then you basically just grab the patient and put him inside a helicopter and try to get out. Or he's telling you, hey, a couple of minutes max, and then you just reduce to the max. What do you do with the patient? And just try to package the patient real quick and just try to get out and do in-route care. So that makes it challenging a little bit more. I say whenever there's blue sky and good weather conditions, then yeah, it's just work on the patient. But with bad weather in the back of your neck, it's always a little different. It's you do what you have to do.
For sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. Whatever you've got to do to get out there and get into a good position for you and helping them out. Now, with some of that, like a big thing that I like to say here is like their emergency is not our emergency.
Yeah, exactly.
With you guys at Air Zermatt being like the only, well, you guys are one of the only assets that can get out there with the helicopter. So
Mhm.
how does that work with you guys? If you have bad weather that comes in, do you just delay like a day, or do they have to bunker down? Do you send out tents, or what? How does that work?
So that does happen. I would say not that often per year. I would say maybe 10 calls per year max. So if they're not critical, let's say it's on a ski slope. We have them more often on ski slopes, and it's very bad where we can access them. Then the ski patrol actually have to work and put him on a sled and down a cable car. And yeah, if they're mountaineers and they're on a mountain and it's bad weather, then we have to ask them, how critical is it? And are you able to go down by yourself? Can you guys manage it by your own to get down, or do we need to have to come up? And let's say it is a bad fall and the patient is critically injured, then we form a team of rescue specialists, and if possible, embed a medic, one of us, or a physician, and go there. And then we try to get up by cable car, mosquitoes, whatever we have, whatever asset we have to get as close as possible. But at some point you need to go by foot or with skis or whatever, fitting up. And that's where the limitation is usually with the medical provider. We're obviously not as super fit as they are, and they just go, they don't wait on you, which is good. I mean, at some point, you just have to get the patient and get him down quick versus waiting another hour for the less fit medical provider getting there. And that's how it works. It's rare. There was a big story, I think even made it to CNN actually, of two from Vietnam where they went up to the Hernley Hut. It's like this mountain hut underneath Matterhorn, and they try to climb up a little bit. And you know, going up the mountain is always a whole lot easier than going down. And they were going up, and bad weather hit. It was in the forecast that bad weather's coming in, and they were stuck. And the weather was so bad, and the forecast was bad for 2-3 days. So 3 mountain guides, rescue specialists, who know Matterhorn very well, they went up there to get him. But it was kind of stormy and snowing, and everything was very slippery, and they had to belay them all the way down. And that was a 14-hour mission just on that mountain, and it was very cold. So they do happen, and that was the last call I can remember.
It was passed to me from the Air Zermatt in their webpage. If you dig a little deeper into it, they actually have this story on there, and this is what it says. On September 24th, 2024. The title, a 14-hour rescue on the Matterhorn. On Monday, a particularly challenging rescue took place on the Matterhorn. At an altitude of over 3,500 meters, 2 Vietnamese climbers found themselves in a life-threatening situation. The extreme weather conditions posed a major challenge for the rescue team. The rescue of the 2 climbers ultimately lasted 14 hours. A little further down in the article, it says, the climbers were trapped in a difficult terrain below the normal route. Inadequately equipped with light shoes and thin sweatpants, the climbers were also severely hypothermic. Due to the adverse weather conditions, the climbers could not be airlifted out of the Matterhorn wall at the time. The rescue specialists had to rappel down to the stranded climbers, then pull them back up to the normal route using a rope system. This was followed by an extremely difficult descent to the winter shelter at the Hernley Hut. Fresh snow and ice made the rescue operations an enormous challenge for the rescuers. Upon reaching the winter shelter at Hernley Hut, the rescuers and the climbers in distress were able to take refuge. Meanwhile, Air Zermatt was on standby with the helicopter, ready to evacuate the climbers if there was a break in the weather. At 2 a.m., the helicopter crew took off towards the Matterhorn and, in 2 flights, were able to bring both the climbers and the rescuers to safety.
I think it made the news because they basically had regular gym shoes on for the gym, and they weren't
Got it.
equipped at all, and they were hypothermic, and yeah, that yes,
Not wearing the proper attire, going up onto the Matterhorn. Are you kidding me?
exactly.
Weather coming in. Oh, I get it.
When you stand underneath, you look up. He's like, wow, that's a big mountain, but it's not always that technical, and it's very tempting. If you're in that hut, let me just go up a little bit. Let's go up a little bit, and it's a few climbs initially, but mostly you can almost just walk, and it's always like then you're halfway up there, and you're like, man, I need to go down again, and then that's where the trouble starts.
You know, I got a funny story, and it's nowhere near Matterhorn good, okay? But I'm going to tell this little story because it's funny to me now that you're talking about it. Is my wife and I are in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they have a peak there at 10,000 feet. Well, we're down there for like 4 days for a wedding, and we're like, hey, why don't we go up the mountain? Let's go hiking. And like, oh, this is great. Well, down in like the bottom of the mountain, it's without exaggeration, it's 100 degrees, whatever that is in Celsius. It's 35, 36 degrees. It's warm, right? So I'm in literally a pair of shorts, a tank top, and just a pair of like CrossFit shoes, like whatever, right? My wife is in yoga pants and a short sleeve shirt. We drive to the top of the mountain. Now we're at 10,000 feet. I get out of the car. I'm like, oh, it's a little chilly. And I see people in full on like parkas, like wool caps, hiking poles. And I'm like, okay, something's not right there. We hiked for about 30 minutes and I was like, I'm getting cold. I am not prepared for this. And we bailed out. We're like, you know what? Let's not be that statistic. Let's not be that person right now. Let's get out of here. Now, that was in New Mexico. No snow, no bad weather. Just it was a lot colder up top. Not what I was expecting. But man, you gotta know at one point or another, like this is not where we need to be right now. Let's divert. Again, not Matterhorn worthy, but I'm just saying.
Absolutely.
My goodness. You guys probably get that a lot too, don't you?
Yeah, actually, honestly, not too bad.
No, most of the tourists that come in, they know what they're getting into. That's good to know.
People always say that, like specialists, like the Swiss in general, they're always like, oh, those people in flip-flops on mountains and stuff. But I can't remember too many, to be honest. They do happen, those rescues or evacuations, but not too often.
Right on. Well, I'll tell you what, man, Oliver, this has been a blast. Thank you for joining me and kind of sharing a little bit of highlights and what you guys do up there at Air Zermatt. And you know what? Again, my congratulations to you get through Pararescue school for the Air Force. I'm psyched to be talking to you about that one as well. I look forward to hearing maybe an adventure that you might go on with the Pararescues. Maybe one day. Maybe. But before I let you go, one of the things I like to ask is a piece of advice that you would pass on. And
yes,
the reason this is going to be unique to me from you, because as a Swiss national and someone that's a U.S. national, you've been through Swiss Army, U.S. Army, Air Force, plus working at Air Zermatt. I'm really curious as to what advice you're going to pass on. So what would that be? What would you tell a guy like me saying, hey, I want to do what you did?
Yes. So to be honest, I mean, I'm not the smartest one, and I didn't have good grades, and I'm not the fittest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not a great swimmer. So with all that, I mean, if I can do it, everybody can. I think what made the difference in my life is really just sticking to the dream. I mean, I didn't really have any ambitions until I was about 18. I started skydiving age 16 because when I was 15, I watched James Bond. James Bond came out, a new one, and he was jumping out of a plane. I was like, oh, I want to do that. And I think that kind of kicked off the whole thing, the path of my life, because James Bond. I wanted to be like him. That's why I joined the Swiss, the Swiss Special Forces, and that's the whole thing started because of that. Because of James Bond, I was like, man, I want to do this, so I have to pass selection, and I want to be one, and I wanted to prove it to myself that I can do it. And then it worked out. So I got selected, and I finished. The Swiss Special Forces, you can't compare it to the U.S. Army Special Forces. Like, the whole pipeline is shorter, and they're not as well trained as the U.S. Army Special Forces, but the selection was still pretty grueling. But I made it, and then I was like, okay, I did it. So what's next? 9/11 happened. I started the EMT basic thing. I was like, yeah, I can do it. And I did it. I was like, I want to become a paramedic. And then people were telling me, the older paramedics, like, oh, you should be an EMT basic for a couple of years. And if you advance too fast, you're never going to be a good paramedic because you're not going to be good on the basics. And I was like, I'm going to do the paramedic now. Because of that, because of their advice right away. And I did it. And then I just wanted to become a really good paramedic. And I was just sticking to it. And then I always had a goal next in front of me. It's like, okay, now I have my paramedic. So the day I got my National Registry paramedic, I wasn't really celebrating because I was like, okay, cool. What's next? Like flight medic. And then I already told you the whole story. Just stick to it, because there are so many paramedics I met over the years. They're all like, yeah, it would be cool to be a flight medic, but I don't know, like, it's probably hard to get in. And I was like, hey, do you have your FPC? Do you have, all those certs? They're like, no, if I get hired, I'm probably going to do it and make it. Like, no, that's the wrong attitude. And I strongly believe, so I don't want to prolong this whole thing, but back then, Hello Flight, I remember they had a new position open, and they had about 60 applications for one position. And I was like, man, Randy, how are you going to, do this? Like, how are you going to choose the right one? The one guy out of 60, he's like, oh man, that's super easy. Let me show you. So he showed me how he was going through all the applications. Around 50 out of the 60 were like landed in the trash right away because they didn't have anything on their CV, or they had multiple pages CV, but basically nothing on it, like important. So all they had was the National Registry, and you could tell that the additional certs were only the ones that were really required, like ACLS and BLS, and that's pretty much it. It's like, yeah, I'm not even calling them back. I don't even invite them for an interview. So then he was left with 10 applications. Out of the 10, let's say 5 are real good ones. They're like, okay, let's go through those 5s. And then when you invite those 5, usually 2 don't match at all with the team and all that. So you end up with 3. One usually has some kind of issue with, oh, wow, I'm at their interview, but I live too far away, or I can't move because of family emergencies or whatever. And then you end up with 2. So to me, it's almost like, oh, wow, it's actually kind of easy. Even 1 out of 60, you can do it if you want to. And even if you don't get selected, they select another one, you're number 2. If you keep sticking to it and you keep in contact with them and attend all their training, you will be the next one. So whenever there's another position open, they're not going to advertise it. They're just going to call you and say, hey, are you still interested? So just stick to it. And in the meantime, get every possible training certification possible. And we had a hire at Air Zermatt a couple of years back, and I basically coached him. And he's like, hey, what do I need to do? And I told him, hey, get your FPC, get your HEMS crew member course, get your mountain emergency medicine course, get your international diploma in mountain medicine. So that's a huge investment. We talk about everything together, maybe 15, 16K. But at the end of the day, it's the best investment you can do. It will pay off by itself. Just like, airline pilot training. Yes, it's probably like 100K, 200K initially to get all your ratings, commercial pilot, ATPL and all that. But once you hired an airline, I mean, you get paid. And if you do this career for 30 years, it will pay off real quick. So it's the same thing, flight paramedic or whatever you do. Just stick to it. Get every certification, get every experience you can get. And also for the ones who want to join the military, there are not that many people who put in the work. And it's kind of surprised me. I was like, okay. So it's I wouldn't say easy, but there's a possibility for you to stick out pretty quick, almost with minimal investment.
In a good way and a bad way. That goes
yes,
both
in a good way
ways
and a bad
very
way.
quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
You're either a
you
shit bag or you're a high performer.
Exactly.
There's not much in between.
100%. I agree. But it's in the PJ pipeline. I mean, again, I made it through to all the water stuff. I wouldn't say I'm good at it, but I made it. But if you put in a little work, so there were so many people showing up for selection, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm here." I was like, "Hey, have you done anything? Like, did you prep yourself? Water confidence?" Like, "No, I'm just gonna learn it here." And I'm like,
Oh God.
I mean,
They didn't make it.
There are superhumans out there who are able to do that. But if I wouldn't have prepped myself for years of training for this, I wouldn't have made it. Not at all. I'm not a natural born athlete. Not at all. So I trained for it for a whole year. I gave up everything in my life, and every single minute I invested in either training in the pool or rocking or calisthenics or stretching, mobility, whatever. And because of that investment, I believe I made it through the pipeline, through selection, because I invested that much. So whatever you do in life, go that extra mile and you will get rewarded. So that's advice I have.
That is some great advice. I appreciate that. Can I divulge a little bit further, and can we keep going with this a little bit?
Sure.
Because you made a comment there that I really like, and you said you're not a natural born athlete, right?
Yes.
Well, no, nor am I.
Mm-hmm.
But we train, we practice, and we constantly try to be better, right?
Yes.
And I equate every professional athlete has done this very, very, not the same, but similar. Like there are like professional athletes, basketball players that are very good at what they do, but they practice all the time to work to get better. We're just doing the same thing. We're just choosing a little different pathway to do it. So the fact that you went out there and you worked it at all this stuff, it made you a better athlete. It made you a better tactical athlete. That's what we'll call it, the tactical athlete. That's you. You're a badass, dude. That's all.
No,
that's all I wanted to say.
But thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, Oliver. Hey, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on and joining me and just, again, sharing a little light on what you guys do in Air Zermatt. I need to come up. That's like a necessity at this point. All right. We got to hang out. We're going to have a beer together. Can I get a Swiss hot chocolate? I'm just going to ask. I got to ask now.
So, for the record, Swiss Miss has nothing to do with Switzerland. You will get the real Swiss chocolate here.
Okay. Okay. So, you know what? I look forward to the day you and I get to hang out up there, and I'm going to make it happen. I'll come visit, and you got to show me around. I want to see that place for like real time. So, all right.
It's different than where you at right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little more green, has a few more mountains, and a little colder. Oh, I love it. All right, Oliver. Well, I'll catch you later. Again, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Now it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Axnis. The Axnis PNG wireless ICS system delivers cutting-edge wireless ICS technology to any aircraft. As a fully integrated system or as a carry-on, carry-off mobile base station, the PNG wireless system is the right solution for any mission.
And the RealResQStore.com, your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to the RealResQStore.com and let your gear do the talking. Go. To finish this episode off right, Oliver sent me a video clip of Air Zermatt doing a rescue, getting somebody out of harm's way and bringing them to a safe area. Nice job, you guys.